I'm John from Fort Wayne Tactical. In this video, we'd like to show you how to install the Ruger LC9 trigger kit. We'd also like to demonstrate its performance. On our website, you'll be able to find very detailed written instructions. With these instructions, you'll be able to follow along with this video step by step as we go through the installation process. The first thing we want to do is verify that the gun is unloaded. So drop the magazine and then verify that the chamber is empty. Alright. So now we're going to take a look at what tools are needed for this installation. In addition to your firearm and the Fort Wayne Tactical Mission Select Trigger Kit, you will need a soft face hammer, a brass faced hammer, a hooked pick, and if you don't have a hooked pick, you can use a needle nose pliers. You'll need an 1/8 inch punch and a 5/64 punch. We also recommend lubricating components when you install them in your firearm. Also, you'll need a block. We'll be using a polymer block in this video. You can use a wooden block. We drill a 3/8 hole in the block. This assists with supporting the firearm when you're punching out pins. Okay, so in this first step we will be field stripping the firearm. So there's a cover plate right in the center. Click that downwards. And what you can see right here, there's a pin and there's a scalp that's on the side of the slide. What you'll need to do is move the slide slightly backwards until that scalp lines up with the pin, and then from the opposite side, take a punch and just push on that pin until it falls out. Okay, I'll set aside that pin, and you can slide the slide forwards, and at this point you will remove the guide rod and then the barrel. Just lift the barrel out. Like so. Okay, so at this step we will be removing this plastic cap from the base of the grip. So take a flat blade screwdriver and just leverage up on that component, and that will pop out. And set that component aside. Now at this step we will take a hooked pick and we'll be unhooking the hammer spring from this pin. Now if you don't have a hooked pick, you can use a needle nose pliers for this step. What we'll need to do is basically lift this off the shelf on the grip, just like so. Alright. And then remove that pin so that it does not get lost. Just kind of shake that out. You might need to just help it out. There we go. Now at this point we'll be punching out 2 pins. So take an 1/8 inch punch, and we'll need to punch out this pin here and this pin right here. So position this pin over the 3/8 hole that's in your block, and tap that out. Okay, and then set that pin aside and tap out your second pin. Alright, so at this point we are ready to lift out the internal metal frame from the polymer grip. So push upwards on the trigger and just pull that assembly out. What you'll notice is this plastic cover plate will fall out. Make sure you don't lose that, so set that aside. Okay, so in your Mission Select Trigger Kit, you have received 2 different hammer springs. So this is the competition hammer spring, which offers a 6-pound trigger pull. And then there's the duty hammer spring, which offers a 7-pound trigger pull. We also have a trigger reset spring and then a fire pin return spring. So at this step, you will need to select which of the 2 hammer springs you want to install. For the purposes of this video, we'll be installing the competition hammer spring, which is the lightest of the 2. Okay, so for this step, we'll be installing the hammer spring. So the first thing we'll need to do is remove the safety selector lever. Just set that component aside. And then we will need to unhook the stock hammer spring from the underside of the hammer. So just push that forward, and that just unhooks like so. Then you'll be taking the Fort Wing Tactical hammer spring, and you'll take the longer of the 2 arms. So you can see there's a shorter arm here and then a longer arm here. Take the longer arm, and you'll need to hook it on the pin that's on the underside of the hammer. Well, you'll notice on the underside of this hammer there's 2 different grooves. There's a wider groove and a more narrow groove. You want to install this on the more narrow groove. So just hook that just like so. Just like that. Okay, for this step we'll be replacing the trigger reset spring. So what we'll need to do is unhook the trigger reset spring from the trigger transfer bar. So just unhook that, and that'll relax. Now just lift off the trigger transfer bar and set that aside. Now at this point, what you'll need to do is actually take a 5/64 punch, and there's a hole on the underside of the trigger. You'll need to push up on a pin that's coming through that trigger. So just kind of push on that. Okay. So this pin came out. Set that aside, and at this point you can lift out the stock trigger reset spring. Set that aside, and then install the Fort Wing Tactical trigger reset spring. And what you'll need to do is insert this like so, with the arm coming off in this direction. What you'll need to do is have the hoop of this spring be parallel with the top surface of your frame. So insert that in, and then what you'll notice when you look down from the top side is there's a hole through here. So what you'll actually need to do is take that pin and insert that back through that hole. So that's what we'll do right now. Just insert that in. Okay. Then take the punch and just push that down until that pin is flush. And that is complete. And now we'll be taking our trigger transfer bar and reinstalling this. There's a hole at the end of this transfer bar. You need to hook that hole on this post. So just place that in like so. The D-shaped hole should come over this cam. At this point, we'll need to take the arm of the trigger reset spring and wind that in a counterclockwise rotation until it comes to the underside of the trigger transfer bar. Now the underside of the trigger transfer bar has a groove, and that arm needs to rest inside that groove. So that's what we'll do right now. We will hold these parts in here, and I'm going to rotate this around and just rest that into that groove. Yeah, this can be just a little bit awkward. Let's do this again. Yeah, so reinstall that transfer bar, pull that spring all the way around, and hook that. There we go. Okay, so for this next step, we'll be installing the safety selector. So place this onto the frame. There's a hole at this end of the safety selector. You'll need to line that up with the post on the frame. Drop that in, and you'll want to make sure that the safety selector is in the downwards position, so that would be the when the safety is off. Now you'll want to take the cover plate. We'll reinstall the cover plate, and you'll notice that the knurled portion is upwards. There's two ribs, and those are pointing downwards. So place that in here. Okay, so with those components reinstalled, we're going to reinstall the internal metal frame back into the plastic frame. So for this step, we'll be using a flat blade screwdriver, and we'll actually be inserting the metal frame in, and then with the metal frame fully in, we're going to come back with a screwdriver from the back side and actually flip this metal lever forwards like so. Let me show you what I mean. So insert the hammer spring through the mag well and guide this through like so. Line up your trigger through its hole. Now when you depress this all the way down, you will notice that there is a gap at the very back side of your firearm. And that's that metal lever is flipped to the backwards position. You need to be able to flip that metal lever to the forwards position. So you do that by taking a flat blade screwdriver and getting that underneath that lever and pushing it forwards and sliding it out, just like so. You want to keep some downward pressure on the metal frame so that when you pull out your screwdriver, it fully seats. So at this stage, we are ready to reinsert the two frame pins. What you'll notice on these frame pins is that there is an end which is slightly smaller in diameter. Insert that in first, and then tap that down. And then insert the other one, again looking for the smaller diameter on the frame pin, and fully tap that down. Okay, so at this stage we're able to reassemble the hammer spring and the hammer spring pin. So we'll grab that. Okay, so place this into the groove. There's a groove at the very base of this polymer grip. And this can be a little bit tricky. And take your hooked pick, and again you can use a needle nose pliers for this step, but grab the hammer spring and stretch that over that pin. Okay. Now at the very center of this pin, there's a groove, and what you want to do is actually center up that hammer spring, and you can hear that kind of click into its position. And so that's how you know it's in its proper position. At this point, we can reinstall the plastic grip cap and just snap that in. Okay, so at this step we'll be installing the firing pin return spring. So what you'll need to do is there's a roll pin right here. And this is the roll pin which the loaded chamber indicator pivots on. We'll need to punch that out. So we'll take our 5/64 punch and position that over the hole on the block. Tap that out. Now hold your finger over the loaded chamber indicator when you remove this pin. Okay. Then grab this, set that aside. Now lift out the loaded chamber indicator, set this aside. Now in the top of this, you'll notice there's a pin, and below the pin is a small spring. So we will just flip this over and tap that out. Set that aside, and the spring is still in there. Yeah, so we'll just remove that so that it doesn't get lost. Okay, and set that part aside. Alright, so at this point we are ready to remove the firing pin. So this here is the firing pin block. You want to hold your finger over the back side of the slide and depress the firing pin block. You'll notice the firing pin drops out. Okay, so set aside your firing pin, and again, hold your finger over the end of the slide and depress that a second time, and the firing pin return spring will drop out. Okay, so we'll set that aside. At this point, we will take the four-wing tactical firing pin return spring and the firing pin and reinstall this. Now, I want to point out a couple features on the firing pin, which will be important. You'll notice that this firing pin has a oblong slot, and there's also a flat. So the orientation of these features is important. What we want to do is have this flat facing this inside surface. So with your slide upside down like this, you want this flat pointing downwards. And the slot should be pointing upwards at this point. So take your firing pin in that orientation and the four-wing tactical firing pin return spring, slide that spring over the firing pin and depress the firing pin block. Alright, and push your firing pin in. And if you heard that click is the firing pin block popping into the flat that I had just pointed out. Now at this point, what you should be able to do is look through this hole, and you should be able to see all the way through. If you can't see all the way through, it's because that slot is not lined up. You'll need to remove the firing pin and reinstall it to make sure that it's oriented correctly. But you should be able to see all the way through that hole. So at this point, we can rotate the slide back over. We'll take this small pin and that small spring that we had previously removed. We'll slide the spring over that pin and drop this into this hole like that. And we'll just make sure that plunges up and down. And then we will take the loaded chamber indicator and we'll place this into this slot and just hold that in place. At this point, we're ready to take our roll pin and tap it back through this hole. So just get this started. Alright, so you kind of want to do this incrementally. Alright, so what you'll want to be verifying as you're slowly hammering this roll pin in, you want that roll pin to line up with the hole that's on the loaded chamber indicator. You'll know that it's lined up correctly when you can rotate this loaded chamber indicator like so. So at this point, we're ready to fully seat that roll pin. So we'll just tap that down a little bit farther, and then we'll take our 5/64 punch and fully seat that roll pin. Okay, so at this point, that the four-wing tactical firing pin return spring has been installed. Okay, so at this step, we will be taking our slide and reinserting the barrel. And then we'll take the guide rod and recoil spring and reinserting this. Now there's this end of the guide rod. This needs to sit against this this notch on the bottom side of the barrel. So just reinsert that like so. All right, so at this point we will slide on the slide onto the frame. Okay, And again, you'll see this hole here. And what we need to do is line up the hole with the scallop on the slide. So we need to depress the slide slightly, then take the takedown pin and drop that into the hole, like so. And then just take a punch and just push that all the way in. And the slide should be able to relax and move forward slightly. At this point, we can move this cover plate all the way back up. At this point, the trigger kit is fully installed. As always, shoot straight.